It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Good morning. It is Locked On NFL Sunday. We are live. You've got myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, host of Locked On Saints, joined as always by our good friend Cody Roark of Locked On Broncos at Cody Roark NFL. It is Divisional Round football. We are halfway through. We got both games in from yesterday. We'll be talking to some of the local experts on those matchups, as well as previewing today's matchups. The Cleveland Browns traveling to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to take on the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be an action-packed Locked On NFL Sunday. We've also got coaching hires to talk, but above all else, we welcome all of you in. Don't forget, wherever you're watching from, you can participate in the chat. Go ahead and drop your messages in, and we'll get you featured here up on the show. And if you have any questions for us, or our guests, we'll make sure that we get those on the tab as well. Cody, good morning to you, man. Happy Sunday. How you holding up over this divisional championship weekend?
Hey, man, I'm doing really good. I think Saturday we were all treated to a very fun slate of games. I tell you what, that first matchup, and we're going to get into that a little bit later here, but that first matchup really set the tone. And then the evening matchup was kind of opposite of what we've gotten all playoffs long. So hopefully the next two games here today are just as entertaining as the first one. More drama, more suspense. I love that stuff. But look, man, we're boiling it down. We're getting closer. AFC, NFC Championship weekend is going to be approaching us next week, and it's really all going to be how everything today unfolds. So I'm excited, man. And kind of as Ross said, listeners, as we interact here in the chat and the broadcast, once we have our guests on, please, like Ross said, send your questions. Pop your thoughts up on there. We love getting you guys into the mix here on Locked On NFL Sunday. But Ross, I feel like we've been doing this for almost a year now, but
I know
we've gone through what is this? I believe this is week 19 altogether. Right. So we're locked on live and just a fun slate, man. Like you mentioned, two amazing games here today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a ton of fun to talk through. We'll talk through that, and we'll get some help from our good friends Ryan Tracy of Locked On Chiefs, as well as David Harrison of Locked On Bucks. But first, it's going to be Peter Bukowski joining us to recap the Packers. Can I say beatdown of the Los Angeles Rams? And then, of course, you and I will be able to talk a little bit about that Bills and Ravens game as well. But before we get to the playoff action, we don't want to go without mentioning some of the hirings that have been going on with some of the head coaching vacancies that have been out there. So some of them are starting to fill. There were 7 jobs available. 3 have already been filled. The Jacksonville Jaguars bringing in former Ohio State coach and, of course, Florida coach. Everybody remembers how that ended. Urban Meyer. Jets hiring San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. And then the Falcons bringing in Arthur Smith of the Tennessee Titans, offensive coordinator there. A quick ascension for Arthur Smith. Do you have a favorite hire of these 3 that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Robert Saleh for the New York Jets. Look, I think the New York Jets under Adam Gase were very misled. And look, there could be a whole nother organizational issue that could bear its head. It could be from the top level, but we know that Adam Gase was a big issue in the New York market there. But, the biggest thing for me, Robert Saleh is a phenomenal leader. He's a transformational coach. I think he's going to really do something good. And especially, I think the Jets defense, they have some pieces to be strong. And I think they're going to add in, obviously, free agency in the NFL draft. But Robert Saleh is probably the best hire right now. And I know everyone's going to probably say Urban Meyer because of the fact that, he's the prestigious coach that comes from Florida, from Ohio State, and he's going to come into, a situation where he's going to have the number 1 overall pick. But look, Urban Meyer's been out of it for a little bit of time, and this is his first stint back in the NFL in quite some time as well. I'm going to go with Robert Saleh, who, in my opinion, has earned it. But then, look, I'd say the underdog in that is Arthur Smith. What he's done with the Tennessee Titans, I think, has been phenomenal. So we're going to see what this team is able to do. And also, you guys can check out Tony Wiggins had it on the Urban Meyer story of Locked On Jaguars. John Butchko had it on the Locked On Jets podcast, and our good friend Aaron Freeman over there, Locked On Falcons, has all the breakdown, all the news coverage you want on the hiring of Arthur Smith. So be sure to check out those podcasts on your favorite podcast provider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also partake in something new that we've got going on here with the network, a lot more video content coming out. So you can check out at Locked On NFL Pods on Twitter, as well as Locked On NFL Pods over on Instagram to see some of those quick video reactions, the instant reactions from our local experts as well. I agree that Robert Saleh is probably my favorite hire here, but Arthur Smith is somebody that I'm excited to see with this Falcon system. I know a lot of people are starting to really look at, what is the team makeup of the Tennessee Titans, who had a guy like like Derrick Henry to fall back on? What does the team make up of the Falcons? They don't have that type of a lead back, but I don't think he's limited to just wanting to run the ball. I think Mike Vrabel had a lot to do with that. And when you have a guy like Derrick Henry, of course you're going to run the ball with him. So, but in this case, you've got guys like Matt Ryan, whose career you don't have to resurrect, but that you can extend. You have guys like Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. So, of course, you're going to use those guys instead. And we saw them be very effective in the passing game, whether it be off of play action or not, looking at Corey Davis, looking at A.J. Brown, the resurrection of Ryan Tannehill's career in Tennessee. I'm really excited to see what Arthur Smith does with a proven passing attack in holster. And of course, the hiring of Urban Meyer brings a lot of intrigue to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a fresh new beginning, as Tony Wiggins said, for Jacksonville. And it'll be really interesting to see what they do in the draft. Now, a lot of people wondering if it's going to be Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence. But I think the fact of the matter is that you go with the best talent available, and you're not going to run into any limitation of the type of offense you can run with Trevor Lawrence.
No, not at all. And is it way too early to say Najee Harris to the Atlanta Falcons?
Right.
It's a little bit of a hunch there, but I tell you what, that would be very intriguing. You mentioned they have the receiving weapons down there in Atlanta to make things work, and if they added a guy like Najee Harris, maybe they could run a little bit of that. But in terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars, look, I think a lot of people are making the ties and the connection to Urban Meyer, Ohio State is okay. Well, Justin Fields now is going to go number one overall. I still think that there are some issues that Justin Fields has. He's a prolific talent, but it's going to take some time for him to get ready to the NFL game. And so we could see him probably come in and struggle a little bit. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, in terms of the quarterback position, is probably the most NFL ready as it speaks today in terms of the cerebral, the attributes that he has, the physical attributes, especially as a quarterback. And look, if you can surround him with some talent, look, that's going to be fun to watch in Jacksonville. So Tony Wiggins, I know he's excited.
Oh, yeah.
They've been used to, watching some of the struggling, years down there in Jacksonville, and, Minshew Mania had it was like one of those fireworks that, you light the fuse and it goes, and then it just stops.
Right. Done.
Before it even blows up. So yeah, it's going to be wild. And, I think just the landscape of the NFL is changing. We're seeing it. We're seeing a lot of these, outside maybe the Urban Meyer hire, we're seeing a lot of these younger coaches get hired because the NFL is trying to transition into how many points can you score in a game versus the defensive approach. But I think Robert Saleh is going to be great for the culture in New York, and he could turn it around, but he's going to have support from the top level of the organization.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Robert Saleh versus the New York media, because I don't think he's going to back down at all. Want to take this quick shout out, Douglas Gray. We appreciate you, man. Thank you very much for your support and for being here.
Appreciate you, Douglas. Yeah, Douglas comments on a lot of the YouTube videos that I do, and he tunes in every single Sunday when we do this. So avid listener for Douglas Gray. Appreciate you, my man.
Love that, man. That's awesome. So we mentioned that 3 out of 7 positions are filled, but there's still 4 teams wide open right now: the Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, Los Angeles Chargers, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Which one do you feel like gets filled first? Which one do you feel like, obviously we feel like the Texans job is a little bit in balance at the moment, I would imagine.
I would say that the LA Chargers or the Philadelphia Eagles job probably gets filled first. There's a favorite with Brian Daboll, the Buffalo Bills, for the Los Angeles job. Now, obviously, they're probably going to have to wait another week. And if the Bills get to the Super Bowl, they're going to have to wait a little bit in order to really make that move happen there. But I think it's one of those 2 jobs, probably the most appealing. Detroit, I feel like they're missing out on several candidates. I mean, they haven't even found it yet to figure out what direction they want to go. Obviously, they have a new GM hire. But now it's like, okay, what does the new GM want from a head coach, and who's available, and how does that work? Houston, man, I tell you what, Houston has a problem. If I'm a head coaching candidate, there is no way in hell I'm going anywhere in Houston. I'm not going to Houston because right now Deshaun Watson, the franchise quarterback, he wants out. He wants nothing to do with Houston. So that right there might be a job that they might have to fill on an interim position. I don't know. I imagine they're going to get a hire done, but obviously with things with Easterby and everything that's going on there, it's very, very, it's a bad situation. It's going to get ugly.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. Absolutely. I want to bring up here, because this is true, that this is probably a front runner for Detroit. This is my homeboy Pierre from over at the Philly Blitz. Go and check him out. He does some really fantastic work out there at the Philly Blitz. He talks about Dan Campbell with Detroit. Now, Dan Campbell, of course, one of the Saints assistant coaches. He's an assistant head coach and tight ends coach, position coach there, and he seems to be the front runner for Detroit. Of course, they can't hire him until Monday at the earliest if the Saints lose today. But obviously, they can't hire him until the Saints are out of the playoffs. So many Saints fans hoping that won't be until February 8th, but we'll see exactly how that plays out over the next couple of weeks. But Dan Campbell, somebody that's up there. When you take a look at Philadelphia, I've seen a lot of people talking about, how good a fit Joe Brady could be in that situation. They want to do something that excites that fan base and that excites the prospect of keeping Carson Wentz around. That's a name that I would certainly be watching there. And Eric Bieniemy still out there as well as somebody who could jump within the division and stick around in the AFC West with the Chargers, or potentially head to Houston should they decide that that's the hire that they want to make. So there's a lot of very interesting different paths that this all can go. And then, of course, there's still other names out there. Brandon Staley, for instance, from Los Angeles, who maybe people are a little bit soured on after the Packers performance yesterday, but we'll see exactly how that works out. But still so many candidates out there for these 4 positions, and still potential positions that could always open up too. We just simply never know.
Yeah, and I would encourage people not to get down on Brandon Staley. Look, here's the deal, okay? You have the number 1 NFL defense versus the number 1 NFL offense. And I know there's a mantra that defense wins championships, but here's the deal. What we saw with the Rams defense, they could not tackle yesterday. They struggled. Aaron Donald was fighting through that rib injury, and you can tell, like, being a defensive lineman where you're going to try to get that push separation, and you're getting a double team from a guard or a center, and they're hitting you in your underneath ribs. Like, he fought through that. And look, I think it was one of those games where they tried to battle back. I mean, the Rams offensively, I thought they did a lot better than I expected them to do, but they just didn't tackle. So don't be down on Brandon Staley just because of this one game. That defense has been legit all season long. But look, on the biggest stage of it all, when it matters, you're going to run into some of these issues. And I think a lot of it is personnel when it comes to the LA Rams. There were several things there, but guess who you're going against? You're going against the freaking greatest of all time, one of the greatest of all times, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Look, he is this year's MVP, and what we saw yesterday, Ross, I tell you what, it solidifies it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is going to be a really interesting sort of continuation of this bout to go with all these other vacancies that are out there. It's going to be a really interesting remaining edition of the coaching cycle. Of course, we still have GM positions that are open and things like that could potentially factor into all of this. So a lot of jobs available still, or a handful of jobs available still, and a lot of candidates out there. All right, let's get to our first guest. Actually, before we get to our first guest, I'm going to bring this up real quick. What's good, Sarah? I appreciate you. All right, let's go ahead and bring in our first guest first. Let's go ahead and bring in Peter Bukowski of the Locked On Packers podcast, and of course, Locked On NFL as well. Peter, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. You can follow Peter on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. Thank you very much for coming through Monday through Friday over at Locked On Packers, and Mondays over on Locked On NFL and more upcoming. Peter, how are you, man?
I'm good. I guess we got the Shawneck memo.
That's right. Yeah, man.
Who's got the better beard right now, Aaron Rodgers or Peter Bukowski, man?
Oh, Peter Bukowski.
Easily.
I don't know.
Aaron Rodgers got to shave
He's
that.
got much better flow with me right now. He's got the lettuce streaming out of the helmet right now. I mean, he's really doing it.
He's on one.
He's put it all together, and we certainly saw that yesterday. Can we get your initial impressions on the Packers' performance yesterday with the big win up against the Los Angeles Rams, advancing now to the NFC Championship game?
I'm just glad we used all of that last week and everything leading up to the game talking about this Rams defense. I'm just really glad we spent all of those minutes on NFL Live and Good Morning Football talking about, Jalen Ramsey is going to clamp Devontae Adams and Aaron Donald and Brandon Staley. And it was like somehow over the course of the week, we forgot that, as Stephen A. Smith would say, the baddest man in the NFL plays for the Green Bay Packers, and that they were the number 1 offense in football this season, and that, hey, turns out Devontae Adams is really good. And this ground game, there were only 2 teams by DVOA this season who were top 5 in running and passing DVOA on offense, the Titans and the Packers. The Packers' ability to be versatile in that way. You want to play too high? You want to play quarters? The Packers will turn around and hand it to what I think is the best trio of running backs in football with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and now A.J. Dillon, who, just one or 2 plays a game, he flashes, and you're just like, wow, this guy's got serious talent at almost 250 pounds, running a 4.5 40 and coming out of the gym and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This offense this two against this Rams defense. And by the way, left plays on the field. I mean, Rodgers misses Marquez Valdez-Scantling on a double move on the outside. Lazard drops one on the outside. Even at the end of the first half, when the Packers go down and get that field goal, they had Devontae Adams on a double move for probably a touchdown, and Rodgers threw him a little bit. He has to turn the catch. They eventually get the 3, but that could have been 7 too. So it's pretty crazy that against the best defense in the league with two, all-world players and this up-and-coming head coaching candidate name, they scored 32 points and played better. I mean, 484 yards. They were the first team in playoff history to go over 475 total, 175 on the ground, and not have a sack or a turnover. It's like an all-time offensive performance against the best defense in the league. From here on out, it doesn't matter. I don't think New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Cleveland, Kansas City, no one's going to be able to stop this team. It's going to be a matter of, can you score enough to beat them?
Yeah.
That's something that we saw too. And I felt like the score was a lot closer than the game actually was. I felt like Green Bay was really well in control of the game from start to finish. There were a couple of plays right before halftime, and that's where I tweeted. I was wondering, I was like, I wasn't a big fan of Green Bay's defensive approach right before half because it was literally play off, rally to the short stuff, but then they were able to get downfield. After that, I mean, they adjusted really well. They played tough. And I know, Peter, you probably have talked about this a lot because we've seen this happen several times right before half or towards the end of games, sometimes in Packers games where they do loosen up a little bit, but they did a really good job adjusting. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and Broncos fans got mad at me yesterday because I tweeted, I said, it's going to be really crazy watching Tim Patrick catch touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers next season. But let's focus here. I just want to foreshadow that for when that actually happens. We're going to save this clip. It's going to happen. It's going to come true. But Davante Adams against Jalen Ramsey. Davante Adams pregame. He heard the talk all week long. He goes up to Jalen Ramsey in the DB unit right before pregame, kind of chirps a little bit, but then he backs it up. I mean, you had conversation from top NFL cornerbacks like Chris Harris Jr., even Darius Slay, who went against Davante Adams this year. They were talking about, really, you cannot cover this guy. It's hard no matter what kind of technique you use, whether you use an inside technique or you try to play outside leverage. He's going to find ways to do it. And there was one particular play where Davante Adams extends outside, cuts back inside almost on a dig route. Jalen Ramsey, he's still retreating, and he's got man coverage. What is it about Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers? Because I remember there was some talk in 2014. A lot of people were down on Davante Adams because he was struggling as a young guy. Now, all of a sudden, he looks like the best wide receiver in the National Football League.
Yeah, 9 catches on 10 targets.
Yeah.
That's not being shut down. Now, only 66 yards, but did have the touchdown. And this was the game plan, guys. When you watched, and this is going to be weird, but when you watch the Jets game, because remember, the Jets beat the Rams, Sam Darnold played a really patient game. Everything underneath, because that's what the Rams give you. They're not going to let you beat them deep. They're just not. And Green Bay had 2 or 3 chances to get deep, and they hit them. I mentioned the 2 misses as well. But so the thing that makes Davante so tough, and I actually had a receivers coach text me this week, said Davante is going to eat up Ramsey. And now he didn't eat him up. But the play that you mentioned, his release at the line of scrimmage, you can't touch him. And he had this great line to Brian Bollinger when they did one of those Game Pass, behind the scenes interview things with him. I forget the name of it. And he said, if you watch Jerry Rice clips, he's not making catches with guys draped all over him. Right? He's open. Right. And so that's the kind of game that he's trying to play. He wants to win number 1 at the release, and then number 2 at the top of the route. And his ability to win on the release, I mean, he makes every route look the same until right before he breaks it off, right? Or he comes out, he's got that little hop release where you don't know, if you have inside leverage and he wants to get inside, he uses that hop release to square up the defender so that then is now negated. He doesn't have it anymore. And now Davante has a 2-way go. He's so smart and so subtle about what he does that his ability to run routes, I mean, he has become the preeminent route runner in football. And that's what makes him so tough. And I think what Green Bay did that was so smart was they didn't force the ball to him. They didn't say, okay, well, we're going to throw, they threw it to him 10 times, right? But they didn't force it to him in the middle of the field. They didn't force it to him down the field. They took what was there and they hit the 1 double move with Adams, and they had the special for him, right? The jet motion. Right. He comes back across the field. They knew Ramsey was going to chase him at the goal line. Ramsey didn't follow him most of the game. Follows on third downs and in the red zone. And that's what we saw. And so that first red zone trip, Green Bay couldn't get anything going. What do? They come back in the second red zone trip with some man beaters for Adams. And you have that jet motion, the Rams run it, but the Chiefs is the team that runs it. It's unstoppable. Sure. When you send Tyreek Hill one way and send him coming back and you're getting man coverage, it's barbecue chicken. It's over. And even though Ramsey runs a faster 40 than Devontae Adams, doesn't matter because play design and because of his connection with Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers one-step fire, and it is a laser beam, and Devontae has to go down and make the catch, and he does. So it's number one, it's his ability to win at any point. He can win at the catch, but he wins at the line of scrimmage. If by some chance you stay with him at the line of scrimmage, he can win at the top of his route, and then he can win at the catch point. So then add in the fact that he's getting the ball from maybe the greatest pure thrower ever. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously the Green Bay offense absolutely showed out yesterday, but the Green Bay defense had some pretty nice moments themselves, including 4 sacks, putting a lot of pressure on Jared Goff. There was absolutely love it, big fan. There was absolutely no place for comfort for Jared Goff. What was it about the Packers defense that allowed them to get so much pressure yesterday, and how important was that to the result of this game?
Well, when Mike Patton didn't have defensive linemen dropping it, we're able to create some pressure. The 3-man rush and some of those zone drops just absolutely drive me nuts. They drive Packer fans nuts. If Cody is mad watching it and has no skin in the game, know that Packer fans feel a type of way about what's going on there. But guess what? At the end of the game, and this is something that happens every Packers game, it seems. There's 2 or 3 drives where you're just like, what is this guy doing? What are these calls? Why are they playing the Sharman soft coverage? I don't understand it. They've got Jair Alexander, they've got Darnell Savage and Amos and all these guys. And then you look in the final box score and you're like, they gave up 244 yards total. 18 points. Jared Goff, 174, 96 yards on the ground. Like 2 of 8 on third down.
Yeah.
That's a really good defensive performance against the playoff team, even one headed by Jared Goff. This is still Sean McVay. This is still Andrew Whitworth, who's going to be probably a Hall of Fame left tackle. Robert Woods is still a really good player. Cam Akers is a really promising rookie. He played well in this game. It was the situational football that Green Bay played and their ability to rush with 4. I think Mike Patton gets a little in love with it. But their ability to rush with 4, with John Gary, who had a sack and a half, Kenny Clark, who had a sack and a half, Zadarius Smith, who didn't get credit for one of the sacks, but he created it with his interior pass rush. Their ability to get home with 4 is, I wouldn't say unique to them, but it creates advantages for them that a lot of other teams don't have. Yep. Tampa Bay can do it. New Orleans can do it. I don't know if any of the AFC, I guess there's 3 of them still, any of the AFC teams can really do it. I mean, the Chiefs need to blitz to get pressure. Frank Clark has been like secretly awful for them this year. And that defense has not been very good. So, the Packers have some advantages there with their pressure with 4. And that's the game plan. That's what Mike Patton wants to be. Don't give up anything deep. That's the sort of soft zone coverage. Don't give up the big play. Don't give up the home run. And then bet that you're going to make the mistake. That you're going to have, I mean, the drive that the Rams had in the second half, and by the way, they only had 1 drive in the second half with a chance just to tie or take the lead. 1 drive, and they punted. The decisive set of drives or plays, first, second down, sack, third down, you got to throw it underneath because it's 3rd and 14. And you can't push the ball down the field. Any 3rd and medium plus for the Rams felt like 3rd and a mile. And the Packers are betting that they can get 1 sack or 1 crucial penalty, or you're going to make 1 drop. And guess what? Green Bay's scoring 30. So you can't afford to be inefficient because Green Bay, who scored on 5 of their first 5 drives, you can't have a drop. You can't take a sack. You can't have a holding penalty, or you're screwed.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you look, Aaron Rodgers, the way that he played, I know a lot of people are like, why are people surprised how he's playing? It's not how he's playing, it's how he's playing at his age. I mean, he's doing things that we're seeing young guys like Lamar Jackson do, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, but he's doing it better than those guys are. I mean, his ability to throw on the run, I think, is top tier right now in the National Football League. And Peter, you mentioned that one play to Devontae Adams. We saw it a couple times where he's under center, hike, quick throw to Devontae Adams because the corner's playing 5 yards off, and then bam, you're going to get 6 yards right off the pop there. That's effective football right there, and that's efficient. In your opinion, as the Packers now, for the first time in a long time, they're going to host for Aaron Rodgers the NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. What is it that the Packers need to avoid, regardless of who they play, whether it's the Bucs or whether it's the Saints? What do they have to avoid next week in the NFC Championship that you feel like could be an issue? But if they don't, obviously, if it doesn't come up, then that's great. But what is it that they have to avoid altogether?
Turnovers. Can't have it. And I mean that in the games that they've lost, it's been turnovers. The Buccaneers game is the prime example. Yeah. But you look at the Colts game, they had 4 turnovers in that game and still had a chance with the ball in overtime to go down and score. And I think when they got the ball in overtime, everyone just assumed they were going to go score because the Colts couldn't stop them all day. The Bucs game, the more you look back on it, it really looks like an anomaly. And Rodgers said it after the game and took some flack for it, but they just don't turn it over. And they've turned it over 11 times all season. The Rams had 25 turnovers this season. And the Seahawks game last week was the first game all season that they didn't turn it over. Defensively, the Rams can manage that because they create turnovers. They can create defensive scores. The Packers defense doesn't create enough turnovers to live with their offense turning it over. And so if they're going to turn it over, it has to be in a game where they score 40, because you can't give up extra possessions. This defense, as I just laid out, relies on the efficiency of the offense. And so if you're going to give them extra possessions, it's going to make it tough for the defense. They're going to have to create some turnovers then as well. And against Tom Brady or Drew Brees in big games, those guys are probably just not going to turn it over. So you have to avoid that. And that's the thing. I think this is true for almost any team the Packers play the rest of the way. If they don't turn it over, they're going to be really hard to beat because they're getting to 30. And so you have to get to 32.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, man, we appreciate you coming through and for being with us. I am going to ask you real quick before we get you out of here. You're also hosting over at Locked On NFL, so you have a really great understanding of what's going on all across the league. Would you like to give some predictions for both of today's games?
I think the Saints win a close game. I think it's going to be a really good game, but I think the Saints win. I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but this idea that it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season is not true. 65% of the time, the team that sweeps the other team in the regular season wins in the playoffs.
Right.
65% means it's not that hard. And guess what? It's usually because the one team that sweeps the other team is better. And I think that's the case in this game. I just think New Orleans is better.
Sure.
And I like the Chiefs. That's not sparkling analysis, but I think it's going to be close.
Yeah.
Because I think the Browns are set up with the way that they can. Myles Garrett, if he has a big game, this is the kind of game that sets up well for Cleveland because their ability to run the ball. This is strength on weakness.
Right.
The Browns are one of the best running teams in the league. The Chiefs are one of the worst running defenses in the league, and we saw with the Falcons. If you play a 17-14 game, you have a chance to beat them, and really Atlanta should have won that game. You have a chance to make an interception in the end zone to seal the game.
Right. And
because Patrick Mahomes is something of Harry Potter, it didn't work out for the Falcons. But that's the kind of thing that they have to do, and I think the Browns are set up to do it. They have that one defensive player who can wreck the game, and then their on offense matches up with Kansas City's biggest weakness on defense. And we've seen the Chiefs sleepwalk through some of these games. I mean, the NFL is not like the NBA. We don't see teams usually sleepwalk through really half season and then, go into the playoffs and just kick everyone's ass. We just don't see that.
Right.
I'm not worried about the Chiefs. I'm just saying, I think that I'm not going to be surprised if this game is close, and I'm certainly not going to be surprised if they win and then lose to the Bills in the AFC Championship game, just because I think the Bills are also really good.
Yeah, Bills are Outstanding. We'll get to their game here in a little bit as well. Whoever has some time that's watching, if you have an opportunity to get us the Photoshop of Patrick Mahomes as Harry Potter, we would all very much appreciate it. So thank you very much for your time. And Peter, as always, man, we appreciate you. The Green Bay Packers 18-5 in the playoffs, win at home. They'll be hosting the NFC Championship game next Sunday night against either the Saints or the Bucks. Peter, we appreciate you coming through. And of course, y'all can follow him on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. We'll holler at you again soon. I'm more than certain.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Peter's got the Rodgers rate. He's got the Rodgers rate. And I tell you what, just watching Aaron Rodgers perform yesterday, it was very, I mean, I don't want to say I was surprised, but it was very impressive. I mean, like you said, I mean, the guy is up there in age, but the way that he plays the position, the way that he throws guys open, I mean, obviously it's great when you have Devontae Adams too, who creates such great separation with his route running ability, but he knows where his guys are going to be and he delivers perfect throws. I mean, I have never seen, to be honest with you, I've never seen Aaron Rodgers throw a football that wasn't a perfect spiral. Like
I know, it's insane.
Ever seen it. Ever.
It's
I've never
absolutely insane.
So it's gonna be crazy, man. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Peter on some of those points. You know what I've noticed too in watching Packers games this year is like, you know, that Tampa Bay game. I mean, they have a chance, I think, to go up 10-0 early on, and then they call back a touchdown, and Rodgers does like that funny end zone celebration, and everything just goes. It just goes downhill after that. I think that they're playing super efficient football. Those turnovers came at early parts of the season. And also I think against Jacksonville, we saw Rodgers have some struggles in terms of some interceptions, but he's been very clean after that. And it's going to be hard to beat that. And this could be the year. And I believe Rich Eisen had tweeted out, this has the opportunity going to the NFC Championship next week. I mean, you have the division round. You have literally a back-to-back playoff matchup with first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, and then either Drew Brees or Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers next week. So it's going to be wild. The NFC, I think, might be one of the most dangerous aspects right now of the NFL playoffs. So
yeah, absolutely. And then you get to cap all that off with one of those teams going up against potentially Patrick Mahomes, another if he continues his trajectory. First ballot Hall of Famer. So good quarterback play, succeeding in the playoffs. Who would have thunk it? Really quick shout out to both Tito and William. We saw you guys. Thank you very much for being here. Douglas, we appreciate you as always. We're going to move on to our next guest before we come back a little bit later to talk Bills and Ravens. We're going to bring on our good friend, Ryan Tracy of the Locked On Chiefs podcast. Ryan, we appreciate you very much for being here. You can catch Ryan Monday through Friday over on Locked On Chiefs. You can catch him on Thursdays on Locked On NFL as well. And you can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Tracy NFL. Ryan, we appreciate you coming through, man. How's it going?
Morning, fellas. I'm just here for the sparkling, like Peter said. I'll do what I can.
Hey, man, we appreciate it 100%. Regardless of why you're here, that you're here. And we appreciate it very much, of course, man. You guys, obviously, you and Chris do some excellent work over at the Locked On Chiefs podcast. Y'all have been breaking it down all week. A great crossover episode, of course, with Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. Can you talk to us a little bit about the feeling around the Kansas City Chiefs heading into this game as they look to potentially stamp themselves a ticket to host Buffalo next week?
Honestly, the feeling around the fan base is one of rolling eyes. Oh no, they haven't outscored everyone by 20 points every game. That's the general consensus amongst the fan base. For us, it is a little bit more. Hey, there are some things that could trip them up. The Browns are a serious team. We've done a lot, and Jeff was great this week. So there are certainly aspects, and Peter hit one of them that it is strength on weakness in terms of the Browns run game. And a guy that I have been saying probably since mid last season, Nick Chubb's the best back in the league, period.
Right.
I don't care what you're talking about. He can do it all. And this is literally one of the matchups that I didn't want to see for the Chiefs to try and do the repeat thing. And I'm not one for dynasties in general. I'm anti-dynasty, if you say that that way. But I do like the back-to-back thing. So
sure.
Let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, and they would be the first team to go back-to-back since the New England Patriots 2003, 2004, if I remember correctly, was the last time that happened. If I remember correctly, I might be missing some. The New England Patriots. You remember them?
Oh,
they used to be a thing.
Those Boston guys. Yeah.
Ryan, one of the things I have been concerned about looking at this matchup, especially seeing a team like Cleveland that has been playing football. They haven't had any rest time. They haven't had any, bye weeks because they've really been fighting for their playoffs lives. And crazy enough, they're the only team from the AFC North that is still remaining. That is wild to me. But obviously they have a lot of talent there. One concern that I have, Ryan, because out of experience of just, covering the Denver Broncos, is the Broncos at one point back in 2012, they had a first round bye. And then the Baltimore Ravens came off of a wild card, and then they beat them. Last year, we saw it with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They had a first-round bye. Tennessee comes in and beats them. Are you a little worried about them not – Patrick Mahomes really hasn't played football in about 2.5, almost 3 weeks altogether. Are you a little worried about that, or do you feel like they're going to come out of the, the bye week and, well-rested and well-prepared to put on an offensive clinic?
Not too worried about it. To Andy Reid, a bye week is just a little extra time to smash your opponent. He's not concerned about it. For Mahomes, I think what you saw Patrick get into at the end of the season was trying to push his agenda. He wanted to get Kelsey that record. He wanted to continue to threaten downfield, even when you saw teams like the Falcons that did a good job guarding deep. And I think that was a process issue that was having the first-round seed in the bag at that point. Like, I don't think that carryover is anything to be concerned about. He has shown that he has the ability, when confronted with defenses that are taking away the deep ball, that he can bring it underneath, and he can be smart, and he can attack, especially what we saw from Cleveland last week, which I think they're going to try to hide and get to a cover two too high safety look. And, when you have McCole Hardman and Travis Kelce that can attack between the hashes, I think that's a big smile for Patrick Mahomes. At the end of the day, he didn't get the scar on his head. Maybe it hit him in the voice box, but Harry Potter is somewhere in there.
It should be a ton of fun, of course, watching this game today. You talked a little bit about Nick Chubb and how great he is. What do you think Kansas City has to do in order to limit that production? And is their focus going to be on taking away the run game and making Baker Mayfield beat them with his arm?
I'm not going to quote Frank Clark because that's not safe for television or whatever we were doing. But I expect them to do exactly what they did last season when they were confronted with Derrick Henry and having to stop that offense that way and rely on your secondary to take up the slack when they had to shift to the pass. I expect the same thing. I don't think it's going to be let's pack the box and dare Baker to make plays, because I think he's shown over the last half of the season that he can do that. Yeah. So I don't think it'll be as much of sell out to stop the run every time. Especially when Kareem Hunt's in the game, because the Chiefs know better than any other team in the league what he can do in the pass game. So you can't try to crowd up in the A-gaps and take that all away all day long. But I think it is very much at the top of their list. They're going to attack the run first and make them shift to what the Chiefs feel that they have a better matchup in the pass game.
It's going to be a battle of which cover two prevails for these teams. I know Spags runs a lot of that cover two. He also runs a lot of cover four. I think for this matchup too, Ryan, obviously for the Browns coming off the victory that they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, what is it that the Kansas City Chiefs defense has to do today? I know we talk about stopping the run, but when it comes to Baker Mayfield and the passing game, we see a lot of naked bootleg. We see a lot of that. What matchups in this for the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs are you most looking forward to against this Browns offense?
It's got to be anyone other than Chris Jones that gets to the quarterback. That's been the problem. And, a lot of dirt has been thrown at Frank Clark this year. And I feel like what we saw from him in 2019, getting ready for the Super Bowl run, was that bye week being the thing that lifted him. I think he struggled. I think he's had some nagging injuries all season long. And I hope that this couple of weeks off, like we were saying earlier, while it might be a detriment for some, I think this is going to really help Frank Clark. And I feel like this is a spot where, if I know him, he will elevate his game again if he's at all capable. If you don't see Frank Clark do anything, then there's something more serious going on, in my opinion. But they've been pretty solid at maintaining the edge. Obviously, Frank and Chris line up together on the right-hand side of the defense quite often. They will move around, but that's their normal spot. And so it comes down to guys like Alex Okafor, Tano Pass, and, rookie Mike Dana to set the edge on the opposite side and make sure that you maintain that contain. And so if we do see boots, I feel like, especially Mike Dana's had a pretty good run of being able to eat up that ground when it's just him and a quote-unquote mobile quarterback. So I'm feeling fairly confident that they're going to be able to do that. They have to pass rush as a unit, and I think they'll be able to get some pressure.
Yeah. We have a little bit more time, so I'm going to throw in one extra question for you before we get your prediction, if you don't mind. I just want to know a little bit about the Kansas City passing defense, particularly with rookie L'Jarius Sneed, who has had a great season. What's the matchup feel like in terms of, you mentioned that they feel like they match up better in the passing game, it sounds like. How is that for the secondary, that matchup up against the skill position players for the Cleveland Browns?
The interesting thing on the outside, you have Bashad Breeland and Shavarius Ward who like to play man. As long as they can get in there and make contact, they feel like the outside receivers aren't the threat that they're too concerned about. They'll live with plays being made by Higgins, etc. It's Jarvis, and they're going to put LJ Sneed on Jarvis because he has the speed and the ability to change direction to move with him. Now, that said, I don't think it's going to be an all-day matchup. I'm sure Cleveland will move Jarvis around, get him on the edges, and they're not one to really flip everything. What you might see is some juxtaposition with LJ and Tyrann. Tyrann Mathieu can come in and play the slot too. And LJ played safety his last year in college. So they have that variability that I hope Spags will take as much advantage of as he can by moving some pieces around. Clearly, I think Jarvis has to go through. Everything goes to him first. Don't be upset when you see David Njoku do something. Athletic tight ends are a thorn in the side of this defense.
Sure.
So I think a guy that doesn't get that many opportunities, I think he could take advantage of some.
Yeah. You know what I love about L'Jarius Sneed, Jarvis Landry, and Tyrann Mathieu?
Oh, what would that be?
They're all Louisiana boys.
Oh, shocking.
They're all Louisiana boys.
NFLSU, man. NFLSU. That's how it goes. Ryan, one thing, I'm going to throw it your way. I mean, how do you see this matchup going for the Chiefs versus the Browns? What is your prediction? I know the people of Locked On NFL Sunday, they are eager to hear.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Don't be shocked. I think Kansas City's going to pull this out.
What?
I know, right? So long as they don't get into going down 24-0, I feel like Cleveland fans don't get too happy when they're up 10. I feel like it might need a kick in the face. The Chiefs just seem to need to have something to threaten them before they get fully up and running. So I do think that the Cleveland Browns will be able to run on them early and probably get out to a lead. I think at that point things will swing and Patrick will become Patrick. I think Travis Kelce has a great matchup against two younger linebackers that I think if they're going to try to throw at them, they can. And if they try to throw safeties at them, nobody on that secondary can cover Travis Kelce. So look for him to be the focal point and then move off from there. At the end of the day, I think Cleveland puts up a very good fight. I called it on the show the other day. I'm going to stick with it. 33-28 Chiefs.
Yeah, a little close. We love it. Ryan, appreciate all the work that you do. Locked On Chiefs, Locked On NFL every Monday through Friday over at Locked On Chiefs, every Thursday over at Locked On NFL, along with Christopher Carter of Locked On Steelers. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Tracy NFL. We appreciate you coming through, man. As always, enjoy the game today.
Thanks, fellas. Have a good time.
You too.
Ryan's the GOAT, man. I get to talk with Ryan at least 2 times a year for our crossover shows because
he's right.
Locked On Chiefs, folks. But I'm still going to stick by it, man. I'm very concerned about the bye week blues, man. History has taught me to respect the bye week and to not get too comfortable. Because how the conversation, I mean, this year, only the 1 seed gets the first round bye, right?
Right.
It's always been the first round. I mean, the first seed and the second seed. Now that has changed, but we have seen teams just trying to get that home field advantage, trying to secure that. I feel like home field advantage is probably more important than obviously a first round bye. But the buys are very, very concerning to me. And Kansas City is a team. They've beat a couple of teams. I know they beat Denver pretty handily in that first matchup earlier this season. But they're a team that hasn't really gone through and I think blown people out the way that a lot of people have expected them to with the offensive talent that they've had. They've played a lot of close games. And so I think if they get into a shootout here, I mean, obviously I think Kansas City, they probably are the team that's favored to not make the most mistakes in those kind of situations. But look, I'm a little skeptical. My loins are telling me a little different, right? I'm still going to be bold this week when it comes to this matchup. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans are going to like my pick. So we'll get to that here in a little bit later on, though. But yeah.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, I do want to say since 2010, the Kansas City Chiefs only 6-4 off of their 10 games off of bye week. So something to keep in mind. I mean, that's not a great percentage. It's not a terrible percentage, but it's not a great percentage either. So I don't think your concern is at all unfounded whatsoever. So over in the NFC, 2 teams that are going to be meeting without having any bye week. We've got the New Orleans Saints hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For more on that game, we're welcoming in David Harrison, host of Locked On Bucks, along with James Yarko over there as well. You can follow David on Twitter at dharrison82. You can check out Locked On Bucks every Monday through Friday. David, appreciate you being here with us, man. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, short, sweet, to the point business, David. David, always love having you on here, my man. And very happy that you and Ross. I mean, you guys have had the opportunity to sit in the same podcast 3 times this year.
Yep.
The past week, you guys did crossover Thursday once again, previewing the matchup. So thank you for joining us here on Locked On NFL Sunday.
No, absolutely appreciate you guys having me on, and looking forward to a great Bucks win, another Tom Brady playoff legendary classic in the vault there.
We got a couple of Hall of Famers going at it, man. And we're going to hear everything about how these two quarterbacks are over 40 years old. That's what the whole telecast, I'm sure, is going to be about. But more importantly, what they've done over their time in the NFL between the both of them, remarkable. Tom Brady, of course, Super Bowl legend, playoff legend. Drew Brees holds several regular season records. They are both phenomenal, and they're going to be going up against each other for the 3rd time this season. Much like David and I, this is actually the 3rd time that we have talked to each other, not only this season, but this week, because we had our crossover. We had our appearance on What's the Game Plan over on YouTube, a fantastic trivia show that we both got to go head to head on, and then now here at Locked On NFL Sunday. So when it comes down to it, the sweep conversation is going to be a big one. 2-game sweep over the regular season for the New Orleans Saints in this matchup, going into the 3rd matchup between the two. What do the Bucs have to do differently so that they don't repeat the same result as the regular season matchups?
I mean, it starts up front, you know what I mean, in the trenches, and that's not going to be a surprise to anybody. I mean, if you watch these last 2 matchups between the Saints and the Buccaneers, the Saints absolutely dominated the trenches, and that's what helped them come away with wins in both those games, and made Tom Brady look like a guy who probably should be on the way to retirement village along with Drew. But if the thing to remember, and I think this is something that we've been kind of communicating to Bucs fans all week, who are kind of, I won't say panicking, but a little bit on the worried side, is week 1, you've got no preseason, no training camp. These guys are all getting to know each other. They're all getting in sync. And you saw, especially on that pick 6 interception, it's just a miscommunication between a player and their quarterback. And that's the first week they're going up against live bullets. You know what I mean? So you hate to build in those excuses, but those things are there for a reason. Those are very real human, reactions to the way that this whole thing went down in 2020. And then in week 9, you have what you hope is going to be a better performance. And we had Jake Arians on the show to wrap up our week of episodes here on Friday. And he flat out said the wheels didn't fall off because the wheels were never on. Like the Buccaneers just didn't bring wheels to that game. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that started with missing Ali Marpet. They're all pro caliber, even though he doesn't get the all-pro love. All-pro caliber left guard missing in that game. And then you got Donovan Smith out there left tackle trying to do his job and also make up for not having his running mate right next to him on the offensive line. And if anybody's honest in the Buccaneers landscape, Ali Marpet makes Donovan Smith a better left tackle versus Donovan Smith making Ali Marpet a better left guard. So that has an influence. That doesn't explain the whole disaster that went down in week 9, you know what I mean? But it certainly has something to do with it. So if they can keep Tom Brady comfortable, if they can keep him protected, then some of those mistakes, especially some of those turnovers that you've seen against the New Orleans Saints this season, should go away, should clean themselves up, and you're going to have a much better performance, even if it's not a win. And I look for Rob Gronkowski. I've chronicled a lot this past week. He stayed in 11 times to block against the Washington football team, and you saw the results. And that's the 2nd time in the last 3 games that the Buccaneers have played that Rob Gronkowski stayed in at least 25% of his blocking reps. So I expect that to be repeated in this game. And if it's successful like it has been, then you could see a little bit of a different performance.
Definitely.
Well, and also looking at this matchup too, the Buccaneers coming off a victory against the Washington football team, led by Taylor Heineke, and look, they battled relatively well against Tampa Bay. What was it in that game? Because I feel like we didn't really see the true full strength Tampa Bay. What is it that Tampa Bay has to do different this week so they can avoid, going against obviously the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL and the Saints, to avoid maybe playing, a game where they are maybe threatened in a sense? I think this is going to be a great game, but overall, I came away with the observation. I don't feel like that Tampa Bay can play against New Orleans the way that they kind of played a little bit against Washington.
Yeah, you have to. The middle was very soft against the Washington football team, and what we've seen is that with the absence of Vita Vea since that Chicago Bears game, that's been something that's kind of come up over and over and over again, is the lack of ability to generate a pass rush with just your front down linemen. They have to bring those extra bodies. Usually when Todd Bowles is bringing those extra pass rushers, it's to get a little bit of extra juice, a little bit of extra explosiveness from that pass rush. Now he's having to do it just to generate that pass rush, and Vita Vea being out is a big part of that. And then against the Washington football team, not only are they still missing Vita Vea because he's out for the year, but Steve McClendon, the guy they brought in from the New York Jets to take that place, and really not as dynamic as Vita Vea, but a big dude, a veteran who knows the language, knows how to play football, can eat up some blocks. he was also out. So now you're down to guys like Raheem Nunez-Roches, who is, he's capable to his own extent, but he's a much smaller dude. So from an offensive lineman standpoint, you're not as worried about double teaming him as much as you are a guy like Steve McClendon or Vita Vea. And then right behind him, you've got Devin White, who is not the heart and soul of this team, but brings a very much Quan Alexander-ish energy to this defense. A little bit smarter of a player than Quan was necessarily, not as quick to kind of diagnose and just boom 100%, what he sees in the first 3 seconds is what he's going to go after, but a very energetic young man who can definitely get after the quarterback. So those two guys are missing. So when those two guys are missing, I think defensively, from a scheme standpoint, even from a player standpoint, if you're Levante David, or if you're Jordan Whitehead or Antoine Winfield Jr., you kind of know that you're going to have to help out the middle of your defense a little bit more than maybe you usually do, which opens up things on the perimeter as you shrink in between the hashes. So I think with Devin White coming back, with Steve McClendon coming back, that defense is going to be able to stay open a little bit more. Taysom Hill reportedly not going to be playing. That's going to be a huge thing, obviously, from a defensive standpoint, but also it's going to help them contain Alvin Kamara, because if you're not having to overcrowd the middle to help out guys like Nacho or like Kevin Minter, then you can stay true, stay in your fits, stay in your lanes, and hopefully contain a guy like Alvin Kamara. And as weird as it is to say, and Ross, I know it's going to be as weird as it is for you to hear, force Drew Brees to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where, that's where this team is now, to where the New Orleans Saints, like, they haven't had to rely on Drew Brees to beat them because they've had that great running game. They have great skill position players all around them. They have Sean Payton, who has, his bag of tricks and everything he's been able to do. So I don't think that's unfair to say at all. The only thing will be, can Drew Brees beat them? And there's a route that takes you yes to that question. There's a route that takes you no to that question. I think the Saints would want to do the same thing when it came to Tom Brady over on the opposite side as well. So I don't think that's out of the ordinary at all. I do want to ask, and this is a listener question as well. You mentioned that in the last game, Ali Marpet was out. Now Alex Kappa's out this game over on the right side. Not as great a player as Ali Marpet, who I agree is somebody that operates at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level, but hasn't been credited with a sack per Pro Football Focus allowed this season. How important is it to have Alex Kappa out and Aaron Stinney in?
Yeah, that's going to be big. And I mean, Aaron Stinney has been saying all the right things, and he's been, saying all the right, cliches of you always prepare to play and all these things. And I mean, the team is confident, and the coaching staff is confident in him, and that's all great. But the team was also confident in the guy that replaced Ali Marpet to begin with. And now, unfortunately, due to a neck injury, you don't want to make light of it, but his career is over. But he honestly, if that injury hadn't happened, he wouldn't be playing anyway because of how poorly he performed. And so for Aaron Stinney, it's just going to be something that we have to see. And I saw that one of the commenters mentioned David Onyemata and Sheldon Rankins going to dominate inside. And that's absolutely something that could possibly happen, because we really don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Stinney. And then just the way that offensive line works, 5 guys operating as one. I mean, Ryan Jensen, what is he going to have to do to help Aaron Stinney if he's struggling? What is Tristan Wirfs, the rookie right tackle? Like, we're going to ask a rookie right tackle to now carry the right side of an NFL offensive line in a divisional round playoff game. That's huge. That's a big weight on Tristan's shoulder, and I'm sure he wouldn't shy away from that responsibility. But then you also have guys like Leonard Fournette, and he's someone who, in the Bucs running back room, he is the better, pass protector of the group, I think. And I think that's something you can see if David Onyemata, if Sheldon Rankins, if anybody, if Cam Jordan is starting to take advantage of that weakness on the right side of the Bucs offensive line, and then you see Fournette staying in a little bit more, maybe in the game, maybe out snaps Rojo, who's still dealing with that quad injury anyway, so he may out snap him anyway, to help protect Tom Brady. And again, I think no matter what, even if it takes only running 2 routes, on every snap, you've got to protect Tom Brady no matter what. Because if he's getting harassed by the Saints defense, we've already seen what's going to happen. You're going to have turnovers, you're going to have a potential pick six. And if you get a pick six, or if you give away a pick six to this New Orleans Saints defense, and you give Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara that type of an advantage, the game's pretty much over. So you have to do that thing. The great thing about Rob Gronkowski, and you guys know this, right? Tight ends, they can line up anywhere. So if the right side needs help, shift them over to the right side. The left side needs help, shift them over to the left side. So you can really put Rob wherever you want, and then Leonard Fournette again in there. So I think the Bucs have the pieces to do it. It's just a matter of Byron Leftwich understanding it early, identifying it early. Me, if I'm Byron, I come out overprotecting. You know what I mean? And then I loosen the reins on my protection as I feel comfortable doing it, especially in the beginning. Give Aaron Stinney that extra protection. Don't let him spiral into a funnel of despair of giving up 2 sacks in the first quarter. Right. And now you want to help him out. Well, he's already kind of in his own mind. You know what I mean? Give him that extra protection early, maybe build up a little bit of confidence in him, and then lessen it if you can as the game goes on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get in one of the keys to the game here, David.
Yeah.
And for this Tampa Bay offense against a very talented and tough New Orleans Saints defense, what is the one key that could ensure victory for Tom Brady, maybe to advance to the NFC Championship next week to take on Aaron Rodgers? Something we haven't seen, obviously, because they've been counterparts in opposite conferences, but now they're part of the same team. What is one of the biggest keys to this game, I think, offensively for Tampa Bay?
Getting Antonio Brown involved on all three levels. Get him in the screen game, getting him 5 to 8 yard slant routes, and then pushing down the field with him. Force the Saints to identify where AB is. You already know they're going to know where Mike Evans is. Marshawn Lattimore would love to tweet some more shade at Mike Evans if he could. Chris Godwin is always going to be a target. You know what I mean? Obviously, Rob Gronkowski, we've already talked about him a whole lot. If you can get AB operating on all three levels against whoever they put him against, it's going to stress that Saints defense out, and it's going to open things up for the other players.
Yeah. To be a lot of fun watching this matchup. And of course, the winner will travel to Lambeau in the middle of winter. For an evening game on Sunday to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. We have some folks in the chat who believe that Trey Hendrickson can be the difference in this game.
He already has proven he could be. Yeah,
he's absolutely shown that in the first two. But overall, when we take a look at this full game, what's your prediction for it? How do you think that this all unfolds today?
Yeah, we talked about it during the crossover, Ross, and then what's the game plan, on YouTube. And I've been working my way all the way up. Maybe at like 5:59, I'll finally settle on which team is going to win. Yeah, I think it's 38-31. I think it's the first team to 30 is going to win this game. So that's kind of my prediction. If I have to push myself off the fence, I'm going to go Bucks. Call it what you want to call it, but I think both rosters are, as confident as Peter is that the Saints are the better team in this matchup. I think they're very evenly matched up. I think it's going to come down to who executes better in the clutch points, and that honestly, I could make a case for either team to do that.
Sure. Sorry, I'm gonna actually throw one more question in for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ethan just came through with a great one because we did talk a lot about player matchups. Could the difference between these two teams come down to the coaching? How much of an effect and how much credit do you give to that over these past two games, and how much do you think that will affect today's game?
I think it's huge, and I think that the best thing that could have happened, hindsight being 2020 being 2020, obviously, the best thing that could have happened to this coaching staff was that Week 9 game. Because if everybody remembers, and the Saints fans will remember glowingly, the Buccaneers fans will remember not so glowingly, they set a modern NFL record for the fewest amount of run attempts in that game. Right. Why? Because they absolutely hit the panic button immediately. I think as soon as the Saints put points up on the board, the Buccaneers hit the panic button. They haven't blitzed anymore in one single game in that Week 9 matchup. The defense went completely blitz heavy, just trying to land a haymaker, and it obviously didn't work. The offense went for bombs just over and over and over again, trying to land haymakers, and it didn't work. Honestly, it looked like a desperate coaching staff, a desperate roster, just trying to do whatever they could to topple the giant, and they just went about it in the completely wrong way. Since then, and since coming out of the bye and losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, losing to the Los Angeles Rams, what we've actually seen is this coaching staff get more dedicated to playing a little bit more balanced. And from the defensive standpoint, a lot of Bucs fans are a little bit frustrated because they don't see Todd Bowles blitzing as much as he's kind of known for doing in that defense, and they want to see that defense doing. But what he's doing now is he's blitzing a lot smarter. He's bringing Devin White up to the line of scrimmage and then bailing him out in coverage. He's bringing Jordan Whitehead up into the box and then bailing him out and bringing a linebacker behind him. He's doing things that are making offensive have to guess and have to kind of react as things are developing versus just bringing the house and letting a quarterback like Drew Brees sit there and say, "Oh, you're going to bring 8 guys? That's cool. I've got 50 yards on either side, or 25 yards on either side of me to pick you apart. That's easy." So I think that Week 9 matchup, if the Buccaneers come back and win this game tonight, they're going to look back at that Week 9 matchup and say they learned a lot of lessons from a coaching standpoint and a leadership standpoint that helped them win this game.
Absolutely. Cody, you got anything else for David?
I don't, David. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think it's going to be probably the most entertaining matchup of the remaining games here in the NFL divisional playoffs. To be honest with you, I wish this one was the evening game. That way I could have dinner and just relax and watch the game. But, we're going to get this one a little early, which doesn't hurt. But outside of it, it's going to be fun. It's going to be physical. And I'm looking forward to seeing you two banter on social media as the game happens here today.
It's likely. We'll have our fun. David, as always, man, we appreciate you being here, whether you're here to help co-host, whether you're here as a guest. It always means a lot to have you here. David Harrison at DHarrison82 over at Locked on Bucks, along with James Yarko. We appreciate you, buddy. Enjoy the game today.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Thanks, man.
David's the GOAT, man. I love David. Even to touch on the coaching emphasis there, too, I also think for Tampa Bay, when you lose a guy like Vita Vea, who's really that plug on the interior defensive line, and he was a major part of their success early on in the season defensively. At one point, they were the number one ranked defense in the NFL at the midway point of the season. And with Vita Vea's injury and obviously having to replace guys, they've had to adjust on how they do things defensively. And you talk about the blitz. There were a lot of times where they lined Vita Vea up, head up on the center, which would be a zero technique, right on the inside shade in a one tech. They would slant him, and then they would send Devin White into the A gap. They did that consistently all season long. But then when Vita Vea went out, they started reducing that. So coaching does matter. And I think really between Bruce Arians and obviously when you take a look at Sean Payton as well, I really wonder if this game's going to boil down to who coaches a better game or who makes the first mistake, But then again, people get mad. Like I imagine we're going to see a situation where we're going to see teams go for 2-point conversion. Everyone freaks out. They're like, oh, the analytics, they say to do that, but they shouldn't do that. Absolutely. The analytics say, hey, go for two. And I think this is going to be a game where they leave it all out on the line. It's going to be an all-out war. And I think it's going to be probably the most fun and entertaining football game we've had in the NFL playoffs this year. You can bank on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. And just to clarify, remember, Cody, Denver Broncos, Mountain Time. So,
yeah, Mountain Time, Leo.
Yeah, so 4:40, not as evening, but good question. Good question for clarifying for sure. We wanted to hit real quick on the Buffalo Bills winning over the Baltimore Ravens. I think the big key moment in this game that finished 17-3, it was the big pick six in the end zone. It was Lamar Jackson's first interception thrown in the red zone. I believe he had 48 touchdowns during that streak, and that ended up going back the other way. And that's a difference between tying up 10-10 and going down 17-3. That ended up being the difference of the game. What else sort of stood out to you about this? Of course, Lamar Jackson having to leave the game with a concussion, but he was able to fly home with the team, which is an important detail.
Well, coming into this game, I thought for me, and I picked the Ravens to win yesterday before the game even aired, and I said it was because Ravens, they had a lot of success running the football. Well, Buffalo, they literally focused their efforts because we saw Buffalo struggle against Indianapolis the week before and stopping the run. Well, guess what? Buffalo, they somehow found a way to play the contain. And, Greg Roman out there was like, you know what, let's run quarterback option to the contain side every single time. That's probably something that he said in his head. But outside of that, I was just disappointed with the quarterback play. The quarterback play in the first half, and I'd say even through the third quarter, it was almost like the old Josh Allen. He was overthrowing guys. But then again, did you see the wind? The goalposts were literally swaying. I think the advantage at the end of the day, look, Buffalo's defense, they came to play and they did a really good job. And, Baltimore offensively, they were just too inconsistent. They struggled moving the ball downfield. So you have 2 missed field goals. That probably factors into a little bit of missed opportunities. But I'd say the crowd difference, Bills Mafia was raucous. That was a loud environment for a limited capacity crowd. They're very dedicated fans, but outside of it, they made too many more mistakes. When we're talking about Baltimore, that pick six was the dagger. And look, there was still so much time left in the game in that third quarter when it happened. But I said that is the dagger pick six because at that point they lost all momentum. And then all of a sudden we saw everything else there. Bad snaps. Once again, 2 bad snaps in this game. Lamar did a great job on the first one. The second one ended up costing him the game as well.
Absolutely. It was a fun game to watch. It was a little bit different, as you mentioned, the temperature from the morning game or the early game with that big blowout. And I'll call it a blowout. That big blowout for the Packers, and then this game, very, very different games. Leo, we see you, brother. Who dat? Don't worry about it. You're all good. We're just picking on you. Let's jump to our predictions for the game tonight. Actually, let's go in order here. So let's start off with the Cleveland Browns going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. This will be the early game. The spread for this one, 9.5 in favor of Kansas City. The over-under 57. The highest over-under of the NFL season this season was 58 points, which was set twice in the regular season. And then the next one under that was 56. This will be the first 57, not including the playoffs. I guess that doesn't make sense. But anyway, 57. This is a big one. The spread is big. We heard that. We think Peter Bukowski think it's going to be close. We think from Ryan Tracy that it's going to be close. What's your prediction for this game? Because I know you're dying to get to it.
I tell you what, obviously, thanks to our friends over there, betonline.ag for the odds here today, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Looking at this game, I could see why people were saying, hey, it's going to be an over-under of 57 because we saw how many points the Cleveland Browns put up last week. But I tell you this, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near 50. I think it's going to be under. And look, I'm going to stick with my gut feeling. I think I'm going to be bold for the second week in a row. I was bold last week. And for some reason, I was like, hey, what the heck is happening here in the first quarter? I think that the bye week blues are going to be something that impacts the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I think we're going to see whether or not Patrick Mahomes and company can overcome that. I think Cleveland is in a good position right now. I'm going to go with Cleveland with an upset special here in the 2020-2021 NFL season.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think this is going to be a very interesting game. I think that we could potentially get, because, we look back at the Kansas City and Los Angeles Rams game, which was the game of the year just a year or two ago. And then we had the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens game earlier this season as well. These two teams obviously can score. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs to wrap this one up, but I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than expected. So I'll take Kansas City 31 and I'll take Cleveland, let's call it 28, split of 3 there. I think that this one does end up being a little bit closer than Kansas City would like.
The odds came from? It was when these two teams played each other. I mean, two quarterbacks played each other in college. That's where these odds came from. Honestly.
Yeah,
because right. It was a shootout. Patrick Mahomes, I think he threw the ball 80 times in the game.
80 times in that one. It was absolutely nuts. Absolutely
great.
They
don't play defense there.
Absolutely. Let's take a look now at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to take on the New Orleans Saints. This will be the evening game between the two, depending on where you are. BetOnline.ag spread -2.5. Over under is at 52.5. The Saints 9-2 since 2017, I believe, in games that have an over under of 50 when they come in under. So that's an important detail. Generally, if these games go over, the Saints don't fare as well, but they're also very good historically against Tampa Bay Buccaneers when the spread is within 5. I'll start this one off just because it feels appropriate. I'm going to take New Orleans to win this one. I'm going to take New Orleans to win. I'm going to take them to cover. There is an opportunity here to where they might not have Taysom Hill. They might not have Latavius Murray. Some reports already confirming that they're out. Other reports saying that they're going to get sort of they're going to look at them at game time and see how they feel, but not looking too great in terms of positivity. So I'm planning not to see Taysom Hill. I'm planning not to see Latavius Murray, which could mean some more involvement from some of those other guys along the offense. Marquez Callaway, Adam Troutman, the young rookie tight end out of Dayton, who scored a touchdown the last time that these two teams met. And then, of course, maybe some Ty Montgomery in the backfield. We saw him go for over 100 yards just a couple weeks ago up against the Carolina Panthers when he filled in for the entire running back room of the New Orleans Saints, who was out. So when I look at this one, I'm going to take the Saints 30-20. Even despite that, that's a score I've been saying. It's a score I'm going to stick with. I think this team can win. I think this team can score even without those guys, and I look forward to seeing how the defense matches up against a Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers team for the 3rd time in the season.
Yeah, I don't think the Buccaneers can afford to get off to a slow start, especially against this defense. I'm going to go with the Saints in this matchup. I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to have a very, very big game. He's going to have over 120 yards receiving, and I think he's going to have 2 touchdown catches on the day. That's going to be a bold prediction for me. But look, I think this is going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like it was in Week 9. I do believe that this is going to go down probably to the final 5 minutes of this game, Ross, and I think it's going to be the most exciting game of the NFL playoffs that we've had so far this year.
Should be a lot of fun. We got to bring in Tito Stradamus here. 31-28 Saints.
That man Tito is always coming in clutch. He was right last week too, if I'm not mistaken. So
he continues to get it right. Cleveland loves Cody, and we love all of y'all. Thank you for coming through for today's episode, Locked On NFL Sunday. We will be back next Sunday for the NFC Championship game. Both of those games will be on Sunday. Oh, real quick, Traven Adams, official Jazz fan. Yes, you get a shout out. You're damn right you get a shout out. That's no problem at all. David Locke is the CEO of this company. You're damn right you get a shout out if you're a Jazz fan. That's exactly the way that it works. Conference schedule coming up next weekend. The NFC Championship game will be the early game on the 24th on Sunday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern time. You can back that up for your appropriate time zones. And then AFC in the evening, which will be a little bit close to the evening. I think I got that time wrong, but it's later in the evening. It's supposed to be 6:40. I already started to adjust that for you, Cody.
I appreciate that, my man. Look, it's going to be fun, and we're boiling it down to, we talked about some of the cold weather teams like Green Bay and Buffalo. If those teams advance, obviously they get warm weather this year for the Super Bowl. So you never know. We could see like record-breaking Super Bowl scores if that's the case. So keep an eye on those right there, man. But Ross, it's been fun, my friend, doing Locked On NFL Sunday Live with you here once again. NFL Divisional Weekend, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. Great games left today. Potentially the final game that we get to see of Drew Brees in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, if he does indeed retire at the end of the season, because even if they win, they'll travel. They'll go on the road for the NFC Championship game, and of course, we'll be in Tampa for the Super Bowl. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of good narratives, a lot of good stories all throughout the week on top of the football action. And of course, we'll be back to recap it all and to get you ready for the championship games, the conference championship games next Sunday here on Locked On NFL Sunday. Myself, Ross Jackson at Ross Jacksonola, and of course, my good friend Cody Roark at Cody Roark NFL.
Just a reminder, folks, if you're tuning in, you got a favorite NFL team, we have a podcast for you here on the Locked On NFL Network, your team every day. Be sure to check it out, your favorite podcast provider, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and our good friends over there at Spotify. Also, follow on Twitter at Locked On NFL Pods for breaking news analysis from our local experts on the biggest stories, folks. And we'll be back like we never left next week, AFC, NFC Championship weekend. Myself, Cody Roark, and Ross Jackson.